this panel is about kind of going from zero to launching and going to full production. We went over it a bit today in our session with Riot Games and Ray. Her journey as kind of leading the chatbot development is just been an amazing one, because she was there was a bit of disbelief that the chatbot would be as successful as it has proven to be in the series of tests. And I think that's a lot of, most companies face similar challenges. So I'd love to hear kind of from you guys, from just getting started, like even pre-development or jumping into the chatbot, what are some things that you would recommend companies thinking about looking into? Like, I always use this analogy of, okay, this chatbot's going to, if you're going to hire this chatbot, like what would you hire it to do? And let's limit it to like one or two things, because if you're hiring a new employee or a help desk or someone, you're going to be looking at like specific indicators that they're doing their job well. Otherwise, you're going to replace them or potentially find out you really didn't need that job in the first place. So just curious to hear from you guys. If you want to make quick introductions, that would be great as well. But then the first question would be like, where do we start? Like, before even forming a team or thinking a chatbot's going to be cute and fun, like they are fun, but they often fail if there's not a good roadmap or development map going forward. So I'd love to hear just a quick introduction, and then anybody who wants to take a crack at that question.
Right.
Me?
Yeah, just kick it off. Yeah.
Okay. We're live, right? Because it's still saying on my top left that we're in backstage, but
we're streaming live on CNN even.
Fantastic. So, hi, I'm Ray. If you didn't talk with me or Dustin before, but I work at Riot Games. We lead a team around all of our internal tooling at Riot, and we do everything from all of the work on our support site, keeping our internal tooling, the connection between all the internal Riot client gaming data and manipulation of said data, and outside of that into agent hands. If you ever have gotten free stuff from us, if you've ever gotten a gift from a friend, if you got early access to one of our games, it was likely because of one of our tools, or a Rioter used one of our Slackbot integrations to send you some fun stuff. So when we think through chatbots and the work that I need it to do, ultimately, and I talked about this before, is to deflect tickets. I need it to do a thing so much that they could do it with this bot that they would otherwise need to go to an agent for. This means that it's highly differentiated from, say, a complicated search engine. So a lot of people originally thought, hey, a chatbot is just like a really fancy way to search your articles. We have a whole knowledge-based writing team, so it's not an FAQ thing, and it has to connect with our internal data in order to provide any services that an agent otherwise would need to do. So those two fundamentals really differentiate it from a search, like really advanced search, or a FAQ bot. It needs to, in order to deflect agent tickets, do things that an agent can do, which is access data, change data, give you free stuff if needed, take stuff away from your account, help you refund things, or tell you and show you chat logs because you may have been a bad player and we need you to acknowledge you were being mean to other people. So our bots need to do everything under the sun that isn't normally found just online.
Brilliant. Hans is probably the guy who's typically the bad player.
It's usually me. Guilty as charged, yeah.
Guilty. I can go and look that up right now. Just kidding. I would never abuse my powers.
Con, why don't we kick things off to you with a quick introduction? I don't think we've met before.
Yeah, Dustin, pleasure to meet you, and bear down. I was creeping on your LinkedIn earlier. So I work at HubSpot, and I lead up customer experience strategy. So really trying to figure out, how do you make the relationship between you as a business trying to buy software from a company like HubSpot, CRM, marketing software, all that jazz. How do you make that feel good? And how do you make it feel human? And how, as a prospect or a customer, do we always get you to where you want to go, regardless of what that thing is that you need in the moment? And so when we think about developing chatbots, I'd say the biggest thing that we do is first define that job to be done, right? It's like, okay, yes, we want to deflect tickets, right? Absolutely. That is a metric we would track. And really what we want to do is help customers get where they want to go. And so we really push ourselves to think like, what is that metric we're going to track? And what is the real thing that it does for a user or a customer? And then I'd say the other thing that I really like to push teams to do is go make sure that all of the organizations and parts of your company that metric is going to touch, all the people who have a second order impact or like really are going to care about that thing going well or not well, make sure everybody agrees on that metric and that it is the same right metric. When you have that North Star of, okay, we're working to make reps more efficient, we're working to drive better leads to the sales team, whatever it is you want chatbots to do, make sure everyone in the organization understands that what success is going to look like should you do it well. I'd say an issue that I've run into many times in many lives has been getting a metric that sounds really great, but like the sales team may not appreciate that why deflection is actually a good thing for them, or the support team may not see why answering most of their questions with a bot makes their day better. And so we really try to push teams to make sure they're understanding the implications of what they're going to do and why, like what success looks like and the impact that it has. I think that's oftentimes something that the more work you do up front on that, the better off it's going to pay when you go to launch something, because everybody's aligned and rallied around kind of getting that right thing done. So really, I think that alignment is something that's important up front.
Makes sense. I guess I should introduce myself. Yeah. So I'm one of the founders at Conversation Design Institute. So what we do is train and certify conversation designers around the world. So we see lots of projects fail and be successful as well. And I think what's interesting, I like sort of what do you want it to do ultimately. And I think what we see a lot is that there's a company that, will start building, incredible stuff with the most advanced technology, where at the end of the day, actually what they were trying to accomplish could have done with, a conversational form. So we really see teams of 30 people that worked on a project for 2 years that really could have been done in one afternoon with a conversational form. And I think if you want to go from launch to scale at one point, I think it's like understanding the phase that you're in is incredibly important. It's like, okay, because a lot of times you just want to validate that this even is a channel that you can use. So just work with simple technology first and get it going. I think Paul Graham, Y Combinator, has that famous article, Do Things That Don't Scale. Just, figure out what's the conversation you want to have. What do you how's it going to help people? How's it going to help the business? Does that make sense? Put something live very quickly, see if it works, and then start investing. Because before you get too many people involved, it becomes very complicated, becomes very expensive, and too many opinions in a room, and then you never get it off the ground. We see that quite a bit, actually. And I like the thing of like if you would hire this bot, what is the one thing? And I guess that a bot is like you've got your team now. You're bringing in a child that could do one specific thing, right? And then what's that one thing you wanted to do?
Yeah, and it's good not to put a ceiling on that thing. Like just as an employee, they typically learn and grow and are able to do more things. But to focus in the beginning, like I like your analogy right there on the form. I think that's important for companies to realize that there are use cases. Do you have any ideas on or thoughts on where to start, like as far as recommendations? Like if a form is a bad place, like that could be replaced, what's a good place?
Yeah. Well, I think there's, for a lot of times when companies start, the question they need to ask themselves is, do I want to create a conversational AI project, or do I want to leverage a conversational interface to get something done? And I think it's very, those are two very different things, right? And then a lot of times like, oh, we have a journey here, maybe we can increase that. I think overall, if you look at what's easy value, having a small conversational intake before you go to live chat, automating some of that, that's like the easiest no-brainer. Also on a login page, like a lot of companies lose people on a login page, so when people don't remember the password, pop up as a chatbot there and help them with that. If you want people to download a form or like download a paper or those types of things, those are very easy ones. And every form that you have, well, unless it's mega long, sometimes a form is actually just more successful than turning it into a conversational form.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. For if you're a large organization, how many holidays do I have left, right? The internal HR chatbot. There's so many quick wins across the board, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I think I've heard on previous panels that you were on, you make this a very good point that the case and the time spent as an operator finding the right person on the other line, a lot of the times companies will overlook the importance of a chatbot being able to do that well. And while in theory it's kind of simple, it's a massive step as far as organizing something and is overlooked. Like, do you know what I mean there? Where if you have a chatbot that just recognizes, oh, this is a tech question, or this is a product question, or a sales question, and then can get them over to the correct person. And sometimes just starting light out of the gate with like bot skill sets to do that and pass it over, hand it off to a human in a nice way, is incredibly valuable. And sometimes we'll get clients that overlook like the small first steps and just have this like really grand, like they want the chatbot to do all sorts of crazy things and don't have like, oh, let's start small kind of build up mentality. Con, as far as like, I think HubSpot and CRM and things like that are very interesting. A lot of the panels I've seen are chat conversations on a first impression, or just having one conversation, where I think it's really important for a chatbot to be able to have and handle contextual conversations on returning users, passing flows. Maybe the client is using a bot copy interface on their website, and then we pass an email, it's captured, goes through HubSpot, and a nice email campaign is then triggered, which, I don't know, in my opinion, is also a chatbot if you've kind of designed the email well and have the drip flow. But those are two different mediums. We talked a little bit on the omni-channel experience, but I'm curious as far as retention in chatbot goes. Like, what are your thoughts there? Like, how do we?
Yeah, I think when you talk about retention and omni-channel, I think those are all things to work towards. I guess the thing that I would say is when I'm evaluating success early on, I try to again say, what's the one metric? If we just focused on this one thing and did this one thing well, what would indicate success or not? Sometimes I worry that companies get themselves in trouble. Wow, well-intentioned. They have these grand visions. They want bots to generate leads and deflect tickets and order toast, right? Like they want them to do so many things. And that comes at the expense sometimes, or the cost of like doing one thing well. And I think that's particularly relevant when you're a company who's never done this before, right? At Riot, like you've built bots before. If you were to go build another nth bot, like you've done it, you have it under your belt. I think for bigger companies, though, enterprises that are new to bots, right? When they go, well, what can chatbots do? And then they get really excited. When you don't have that muscle of how to develop it the right way, again, sometimes I think you try to boil the ocean and you end up saying, we have a lead thing that's okay, a support thing that's okay. It connects to email sort of, and it's okay, right? I think you end up with potentially a lot of subpar experiences. And if you do a couple of those subpar, honestly, from an enterprise side, I think it can be hard to maintain that exec buy-in and maintain the excitement internally. If teams have never heard of bots and you go, look, they can do all these super jazzy, shiny things, and then they don't, right? I think over time people go, well, forms were fine, and we spent a lot of time here, and gosh, I just don't see the ROI. Let's go back to the old way. And I worry a lot of times that happens. And so before I would talk about retention and coming back to a bot, I would say, what is the quickest, biggest win as an organization can get under their belt? Is there one big metric that you can align folks on and go move? And then honestly, that buys you, I think, more runway to go find those other use cases, to go wider, that breadth. And then the experience of the depth, right? That's when you can start connecting multiple channels and having different parts of the organization. But I would say from a retention standpoint, I don't think about that really until I say, okay, are we solving one problem well? And then how do we want to expand it based on what's the next problem for the business to go kind of approach? I just worry if you index retention too much up front, you sacrifice the experience. And Riot, I'm curious from your perspective, how does that kind of track? Is that a story you've seen at Riot, or are you trying to tackle like one thing to start, or do you going to go wide first? I'm curious how you guys have thought about that from an enterprise perspective.
Yeah, so I think that this actually harks back to more of, I guess, more of my product principles. You can pretty much apply what you've just said of boiling the ocean to most product endeavors. And I mean, I've launched everything from financial systems to I used to work at Bloomberg and doing a lot of like fixed income derivatives. Like I sit here and it's not a problem that's unique to chatbots. It's a problem that's unique to development processes. So our approach has been start extremely small and build up, kind of to what you had just said, but also with the idea that, again, and I was explaining this before, but I have 5 stages of development, and you can tell where every one of my projects across any one of my teams is at, because you're either in 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5. 0 is like your discovery, and you want to make sure that generally your requirements for enterprise are met as a part of the feature development or what that service offers. A big limiting factor for us was that we weren't going to invest in anything that couldn't scale to 22 languages. It just like that off the bat really cut a bunch of services out. Not that we were going to tackle 22 languages up front, but if we know that we can't tackle 22 languages by like stage 3, we got a problem. So 0 is all about discovery, and we did a lot of tiny testing. 1 is about your prototyping or your proof of concept. 2 is somewhere between, if you couldn't stage your proof of concept, then maybe your third one is around your MVP, proof of concept. And you start small. So as I was saying before, our phases was similar to what you had just said, where we're trying to tackle a problem at a time, and we have scaled all of our problems from all of our tickets and really done a deep dive to the percentage of tickets that we get to what the answers are and how solvable they are. It's difficult to solve. And for context, we actually look a lot to our partners in Tencent, who have 90% of their chats automated. Because they've been working on, they have a team of like 40 that run AI for their entire department, and they've been doing that for years. And if you don't know anything about Tencent, they have thousands of them. So the thing that they do, which is really fascinating, is that they only hire agents who are platinum in the game for League of Legends, because the only chats that come to the agent is because they want to, it's usually consultative, like strategic in nature, to say, I have a problem and I want to make sure the person I am talking to is actually better at me in this thing. Everything else is chatbot based, or at least automated response based. So we kind of take a look at that and say, what are the opportunities for us to automate space? Because specific game questions like that will always need to be in the hands of an agent. And so our philosophy is, how do we up-level our agents to handle more of those strategic conversations and tackle all the things that are so repetitive? So in the process of identifying all the ticket values and taking a deep dive into what percentage of these are automated, we actually can track what they consider, like, they have macros, which is like Zendesk's version of like fast automations, and you can track how many times somebody uses a macro. Great. That's actually our first thing, to see what are user behaviors that we can tackle as our quick wins in order to incorporate that. And that was that, and combined with the fact that we'd gone through this before, but we use a bit of k-means clustering to go and identify the top topics in a specific category, gives us 17 things to solve for, rather than going chat one by one and solving the top 100 million things that a bot might need to do. So we start small, and we're looking for our bot to show and prove success in this account space, because our next gap would be to actually connect that account space to our omni-channel. And then you don't have to worry about the routing problem, but you can see what that chat space will look like in the future with one specific category. And we're working with some of our agents now to say, great, if I want to connect what we call our fine apple bot, we give 20 names for all those things, our bot to this account space, and then we want to connect it on Facebook and through live chat, and then we want to connect an agent. We'll make sure that we do the account bot connecting on all of these channels into the specific account agent, and look at that holistically as a part of our like proof of concept, and then take that to, that's what we want to launch with, because now we've proven all of the core fundamentals at the tiniest section, and then we can scale the languages, we can scale the other sections, we can do everything, and you repeat the model.
So one thing so it seems like you guys chose Dialogflow at the end of the day because you were able to recognize and build a better training model off of like the data set and the intents that were coming in. Curious on what is there like an algorithm, or is there what are you guys using to help dictate what to build next? Is it purely costs on like cost savings for the company? Are you looking at customer satisfaction metrics, or the time it would take to implement and develop like a specific feature set? Maybe it's like the ticketing system goes to the human, but maybe there's part of that human interaction that you can actually automate as well. Like how are you taking the data that's coming in and then kind of training on top of it? And I guess, Hans, if you could answer this well from a copywriting standpoint, because we worked a lot with copywriting and UX, and we help clients still to this day with it. But like very simple copy tweaks can make a huge difference as far as like conversion rates and training goes. So I'm curious to hear from a data perspective on how you train the bot to accomplish more things, and then also a kind of a copywriting perspective on how do you get it to eventually convert higher and recognize like maybe a demographic or an audience type that you think you should talk a little bit differently towards, or and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
You go first.
All right, so I'll take it. No, so what I know in general, like how we approach that stuff of influencing like the success of bots and the metrics as well. A lot of times, what companies do is actually take the current interactions that they have and look at that data and figure out where to search for value, optimize things or new use cases. But when your baseline in terms of experience isn't very high, you're just going to be dealing with a lot of disappointed and frustrated people, where a lot of times if you invest a little bit in conversation design and proper copywriting, you're going to solve a lot of those problems already. You're going to sort of decrease your dependency on NLU. So if I sort of say, ask me any question, you can ask me any question, and I'm already very dependent on my NLU, and it's pretty tricky. But if I say, ask me a question about coffee, you're probably going to ask me a question about coffee. So by framing and taking people by the hand and guiding them through journeys, I very much decrease my dependency on NLU, and it's going to show in the analytics. So we're very much for like taking a data-driven approach to making chatbots better. But a lot of times when companies have so much to win in terms of copywriting and experience, that you want to do that first, and then you want to build on top of the data, because otherwise, if your baseline is very low, it's just not going to improve fast enough.
Yeah, and I guess for us, I wouldn't say that it's similar, but how do I describe this? When you go on a Riot support site, you will not find our bot, like very much likely. And I'll tell you why. It's because we're very new. But what we're doing is we have internal insight teams that are taking a look at the rate of conversion per page. So of the FAQ that you're on, what is the likelihood that you're going to submit a ticket? And if you have a high likelihood that you're going to submit a ticket from this specific page, that's likely the page that we're going to want to target and say, let's see if we can intercept something. What are they talking about? 9 times out of 10, it's you're a player behavior person, and you likely, again, I was talking about the difficulties of how do I tell somebody that they were bad in our game and not get them mad at me, because we want them to play, but we want them to play nice. So our bot is kind of strategically starting to interject itself on spaces where we know that of the page that's being viewed, and this page gets viewed a lot, and this ticket is being submitted, how do we go and strategically intercept those tickets within the realm of questions that we can already answer? So it's not like we would go and randomly pick the question that says, my ranked data is all messed up and our entire bot is based off of account data. No, we'd probably find our path forward into how do we get more account data? How do we get more account and billing data? And then we target from tickets in that space in combination. And so it's kind of like a two-pronged approach. There's the space of where are our players and how are they submitting tickets. But gamers are gamers. And so you always invariably will find that people find these bots by themselves because somebody posted it on Reddit. So many links that we get. If you look at our Google Analytics and say, where do we get traffic? Like for some reason, a lot comes from Reddit. And they'll go and see these things out. So we actually have a list, and where we're building tooling, and we're working with Google on how we access their tooling on some of the natural language processing of what intents are not being matched, and then organically grow those intents out. So from the tactical perspective of which questions are we answering, that's how we're going to naturally grow. From the strategic perspective, though, we're trying to take a look at our next step of where we're going is not just keep it in English. We're actually trying to do a bunch of integrations into our own localization team. So now that we've got a bot that works on accounts in English, we need it to work on 22 different languages and speak in the way that our players speak. And we actually have an internal translation team that we plan on integrating with this bot to translate into 22 languages in the languages that our players are used to, and our team is really good at finding the vernacular, if so to say, for each of those different types of countries and how they speak. Because again, it's leet speak; it's different types of ways that you type things in.
And we talked about this briefly in our last chat, but you've got different sites in different languages, so it's kind of easy to cross-reference by URL. And if the chat interface is there, even to start the chat from that language intent, are you starting to see and compile like, okay, here's all the English conversations that are coming in to the Spanish, to the French, and then kind of building one at a time based on the traffic that it's getting? Or
we probably won't be there yet. Again, we're still very new in getting it into multiple different languages, but I would imagine something like that. I'd say that the job on our team is kind of split into two, right? There's what is the conversation that we're building, or what is the question that we're answering, and then what is the feature that we need to build to make questions better. So we're trying to explore obviously the localization, but if we carry the thought that we have targeted account-based questions, I want to make sure that going forward, as we target different sections, to, I guess what Hans was saying, you never want to say, I can answer anything that you have. I want to say, I'm on an account page, ask me your account question. And taking that browser data, or taking the data that you have on the page, to contextualize what you're trying to help with. And that's our next thinking of how we want to drive that feature, because if we then can prove out that we can take browser data and throw it into the logic of what this bot is supposed to do, we want to extend that hopefully and see what other opportunities we have for getting into like Facebook and WhatsApp. Like where did you come from? Can we pass the token from the client? I mean, our ultimate dream is to get like clicking from the client of all the things that you've just done. Did you just make a purchase? Did you just try to do a refund? And then throw that token into our where we have all of our authentication, and then piece that together by recommending, hey, we just saw you made a purchase. Is everything all right? Which is near impossible for our tech right now, because there is no connective tissue between how you transfer live data into the bot services. But if we can prove that we can get it from the browser, then we can work with game teams to prove it, to send it to the browser, to then get it into our bot.
Hey, Stefan.
Hey. Well, great job, panel. A lot of interesting insights there. So it's 4 o'clock. You know what time that is. Dustin, are you ready?
I don't have a beer on me, actually.
No.
Sorry.
All right. So it's happy hour time, but we'll take any questions. Oh, I know Hans is. There you go.
I'm off to bed in a minute. Yeah.
Right?
It's 1 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's actually 1 in the morning for a lot of our attendees. At least the ones in the chat. You know, a few of them went to bed, but we still have like about half of, actually more than half of our attendees with us. So if you guys want, you can ask any questions here in the chat, and Dustin will answer. And you guys can continue as long as you want. Also, it's happy hour time. So if you guys go to the session, you'll find the happy hour session. You can join in, and you can share your screen, and you can meet the other attendees. And that's the idea of happy hour. You don't have to drink, but if you want to, you can. So it's, you know, BYOB. Once again, thanks for everyone for coming to the event and the speakers. You guys made it great. And tomorrow is going to be our designing day for designing a workshop. It's going to be with Hans. And then the day after, it's going to be our development workshop with Dustin. So be sure to join both Hans, Dustin, and myself tomorrow and the day after. And if for any reason you can't make it because, you know, you can't make it, go to Expo and there's a button from Conversational Design, so you can check out their booth. There's a link to the on-demand course, so you can take it that way too. So if you can't go live, you can do it on demand. It's right in the expo. Yeah, and you guys could like leave some of your contact information in the chat, and I'll head over to the happy hour, and I'll see you guys later.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Stefan, for putting this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Connor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.